Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. It is, in fact, Weapon Wednesday, and today I wanted to take a look at the Milady, which, as of the patch which made its poise damage a lot higher, is, in my opinion, one of the most annoying weapons in the game. Which is a true tragedy, because I loved this weapon back when you had to actually poise count with it and use your brain a little bit. But you know what? What if we made it just a little bit more annoying, is the question. It turns out that if you pair it with an offhand hand axe, or in our case an Icerind hatchet, you get one of the most frustrating dueling setups I can think of. So with that being said, I hope you guys are going to enjoy what you see, and before we get into it really, consider liking and subscribing, or else the mascot of the channel will become the fugitive from the law, Gustavo, which is not desirable, so consider it. Thank you. So, most people are going to opt to use the Milady two-handed, but I don't know why. I don't know if there's an actual science to this, but the one-handed R2 feels more snappy to me, and I also think it's harder to react to when I fight people using it. But the kind of issue with it is that you're doing about 120 poise damage when you R1 with the Milady one-handed, and it's frame 15, which is not amazingly fast for that poise damage. And so that's where the offhand hatchet comes into play. The offhand hatchet comes out on frame 13, and it does 150 poise damage, which allows you to have effectively a Milady R1 that always breaks, and then allows you to make really good use of that R2 as well, right? So if you're watching the footage, something that I can go for really commonly is go for the Axe R1, and then go immediately for the Milady R2. The timing is pretty brutal in the sense that if you don't essentially roll immediately, the Milady hits you, but unless you have a pretty high amount of latency, well, actually, he just did something phenomenal right there. He rolled in at an angle that allowed it to not land. That is the other thing that I was going to get to, but it was just on screen real quick. Wanted to mention that. If you decide to roll backwards, you're almost never going to get out without having gotten hit a little bit. And the one-handed R2, I personally think is easier to reaction punish people with. There's just something about it, whether it be the forward momentum or the speed, that it's just really easy to land on people. Now, one of the bigger issues, or a couple of the bigger issues that I've noticed with this setup, is that considering how brutal your pressure game is and your mix-up game is, most people are going to opt to never approach, pretty much, which can make games unintuitively kind of just drag to a halt, because they know what's going to happen if they aggress and they don't win neutral. They're probably going to get hit like 3 times, and it's going to suck. But at the same time, I could also be doing this a lot more optimally. I could be using heavy armor to be able to mash through hit stun. This setup just brutalizes in the arena. I think I'm going to want to try this against some like buddies and whatnot that are running meta stuff themselves, see how well it does against people like that. But everything I was fighting, it was doing fantastic against. Now, the reason that we're running the Icerind hatchet is that it has a little bit more range than the hand axe, but something that I'm really excited to try for next time is that both of these actually have a B in dexterity if you bleed infuse. So I'm going to want to try this exact same setup, except with hand axe, and both of them on bleed. Well, that was quite interesting right there. That was some comp lat, allowing for that to happen. Very nice. Now, when it comes to Ash of War, something I wanted to mention is that when it comes to Milady, the best is pretty much always Sword Stance. I can't think of a situation where it isn't. Essentially, the forward momentum, the great roll catch timing on it, the hyper armor especially, it turns Milady into a completely different monster. So before people ask about that, I mean, I guess you can run other stuff, but I think that it's gonna outperform everything by a mile, if you ask me. Now, you're also going to notice that the majority of this footage is going to be in the arena. I have a hunch that if you're not... Oh, he's got the electric stuff on him. I was wondering, like, why did my Milady just, like, bounce off thin air? What happened there? Yeah, I do a couple of invasions with this, but I don't think it's all that amazing unless you're getting some really big proc damage. And the reason why is when you're doing a whole bunch of like good frame advantage and good frame data attacks, but they're kind of just pitter pattering your opponent, it's very easy to get overran by someone that either just does a lot more damage than you or get interrupted, which is really bad. If you're doing a good job killing one person and then you get sniped by a comet or something like that, this game plan is going to be more prone to that than other setups, since we're stringing together a whole bunch of smaller hits. So maybe that'll change once I try out Bleed, but that is what it is currently. Now, here at the end of the duel session, I just wanted to show that both the Milady and the hand axe are going to work really well as two-handed weapons if you choose to say handy tech to one or the other. I don't think two-handed Milady needs much of an introduction. It's a very powerful setup that is also, like I said before, quite irritating to deal with in my opinion. But, hey dude, ever since the axes got their speed buff, not only are the hatchets really fast with their R1s, but pretty much every single axe that has this like standard overhead, it is so fast. It is so ridiculously fast, and it has level 2 hit stun, so you get a very good amount of frame advantage, whether that be to go for another attack or to set up a roll catch. Really, the only thing that's holding you back is the range. No axe really has good range, which, now that I think about it, that's kind of been the case for just about every single one of these games. Like, the only axe I can think of that was, like, legitimately long, maybe, was the Gargoyle's Tail in Dark Souls 1. I can't think of another axe in these games that's been any longer than, like, kind of the status quo, you know? So, correct me if I'm wrong, but, man, these things are always short, you know? But yeah, this stuff is able to work really well even if you decide to handy tech and two-hand one or the other. Yeah, works out great. Now, right here I am going to opt to do some Invasianos, which I didn't do too many, like I said. I knew that this would fall flat on its face if we fought any strong competition, and that is where things will hopefully hopefully change if I were to do one of Bleed in the future. But that right there actually makes me want to mention something. You saw that I went for the running R2 one-handed. That does not true combo. That guy, I guess, just didn't press the button at the right time. It does not true combo, okay? Now, the best way to circumvent that is to just go for the running R2 as a finisher, kind of like we did right there. But when it comes to your running attacks, the one you're going to be using mostly is the running R1, which is thankfully very quick. I had a lot of success landing it. Now, right here is a little bit of an interesting situation. Blasphemous Blade? No, sir. We tank that straight to the cranium just to be able to get rid of the Dark Moon Blade user right there, because I don't need all of those projectiles in my life. Now, this is where it starts shining a lot more. Like, once you get into a 1v1 in an invasion, once you get into a 1v1 in invasions with this, nasty. You're just like a turbo mosquito that they can't get off of you, but it takes you a moment. Like, you gotta pick and choose your battles where you use this setup. And so, it's okay, I guess. It's able to work if it's a like slow paced battle, but if you're really getting if the pedals to the metal, I think there's better things to go for. Now, with that being said, this right here is a bit of an interesting invasion. Two of the most just obnoxious things you can run into in a invasion. The Dark Moon Blade, how the mighty have fallen. It was so cool in Dark Souls 1 and 2 with that singular explosion at the end. It was super good in Dark Souls 1 as well. Like, geez, that was a good... It was almost the entire reason to run an intelligence build other than Darkbead for PvP. But, of course, they Elden Ringified it in this game. He just tanked the jar cannon shot like that. I don't know what the hell he did, but it only did 20 damage. But, of course, in this game, instead of, you know, it being like a free aim monster like it used to be, you just Ash of War like that, and it's a projectile that sucks in PvP unless you're the home team, where you don't get the opportunity to single it out all that much. Just a very, very epic change that they made that I love. I love Elden Ring and I love Dark Moon Blade. But it's okay. This is a slow enough paced fight that, like, sure, I'm getting hit here or there, but realistically, they need to play my game, okay? As the assistant manager of Elden Ring, because Miyazaki was my roommate, yeah, I understand that I can just stand here and kind of just look pretty, and these people need to eventually either boss fog me or they need to fight my army of Stilovskis. It's one of the two. And I'm also, at this point, starting to consider maybe I should swap to a different setup. I'm trying to not do that, considering that, you know, if you're going to make a video about a weapon, you should probably use the weapon in question. That is perhaps the sensible thing to do, but if I were playing a little bit more, like, just trying to win, I'd probably swap to something like Gugs and just go for running R1s to neutralize the hyper armor of the Dark Moon Blade. I'd either do that or swap to something with Beast Roar. But they have chosen the go up the elevator option, and this is where I do legitimately swap to something else. If you guys saw yesterday's video, you know what's coming. Watch the amount of work that the Waves of Darkness is going to put in, as well as the bit of HP that it heals, because this is on Great Stars, which changes the game when it comes to this. Yeah, that's right. And just because I have little poise, I think it was literally like clanging with a wall almost, but there was no wall for it to clang with. I don't know why it did all that. The Waves of Darkness, the pulses can actually miss on the elevator. So I hold off for a moment. But guess what? Guess who's in the back? That's right, Stilovsky, saving the day. GG, Stilovsky. Have a good one, guys. Try this out and get probably a couple of people to block you. GG's, everyone. Have a good one.